Hello, everyone. Welcome back from that very short break. We're really excited to welcome 4 PMC students here to talk about their experience in university as a student. So they will be answering a few questions that I'll have for them, but then they'll also be opening up the floor to any questions you might have for them. So again, please be sure to use that question and answer function in the chat feature. I'm very excited for the student panel because it is really what a lot of people love to hear about is other people's experiences. So we are going to not hold you back from hearing from these lovely panelists of students. So today we have 4 students. We've got Tyler, Kayla, Sarah, and Nick. And the way that we're going to run this panel is that I am going to ask each one of them a question, and they're going to answer the question, and then they're going to go back and answer each other's questions if they feel like they've got a little bit extra to add. We'll then be opening up the floor for all of your questions, because really, we want to hear what your questions are for these students. And then we're going to be wrapping up the panel at about 2:25. That will allow us some time to switch to the mini fair afterwards. So without further ado, I would like to first talk to, I believe, hold on a second, Kayla is going to be our first speaker. So Kayla.
Hi guys, my name is Kayla Bernier and I'm a Bachelor of Arts Psychology program in honors. It's my second year and just if you're wondering, I have dyslexia.
Thank you so much, Kayla, for sharing that with us. So you would have been in everyone else's position last year that they're in this year. Yeah. Okay. So because it's so fresh for you, can you tell me a little bit about what some of the differences between university and high school were?
The biggest difference between high school and university for me was that in high school, I sort of, in a way, felt a little bit sheltered. Like I had a resource center where I would go and sometimes do my work on my own. And I had like resource teachers that were always there to like look over my shoulder and help me out that way. But in university, it's sort of like you're sort of learning your independency and you have to sort of make schedules for yourself and to make sure to have like a whole plan set out. Like I suggest buying an agenda because it's very useful and very good to write things down sometimes because when you have something due and you forget about it, you don't really have that resource teacher or someone like a teacher that you see every day looking over your shoulder to remind you like helpful things like that.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so that's the biggest difference.
And so you're saying that a lot of that had to be initiated by you once you got to university.
Yes, not to say that the teachers weren't there, and there are some helpful teachers, but they have so many students that they have to look after too. It's not just you. So just the biggest difference was having to learn independency. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kayla. We'll be coming back to you later, I'm sure. Thank you again. I'm going to introduce Tyler now. So Tyler, if you could tell us a little bit about who you are, your name, your program, that would be great.
Hi, my name is Tyler. I'm a transfer student from Algonquin College, so in my second year with third year standing in the honors program for criminology. And so, yeah, I'll be doing my second year of classes this coming semester.
Awesome. Thanks, Tyler. Now, you've talked a bit about, so you're a transition student, so you were in college prior to being at university. So what did you notice were a few surprises for you during your university transition?
Yeah, so transitioning to university, I mean, something that you guys will experience later is definitely just sort of taking in the campus. It's just a little bit daunting. It's huge, and being in first year, your lectures are generally like 400 people. So the size is something that definitely got my attention. And yeah, it can be a little jarring in that sense, just to see like just the volume of people there. But something that to keep in mind is everybody is sort of striving for the same thing, right? We're all looking to succeed while we're there. and that was something that you learn along the way, is that pretty much if people are in your lecture hall, they're willing to help and they just want to learn. So all the people that are present, they're the same as you. They're ready to go.
Awesome. And it incorporates some of that independence that Kayla was talking about too, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So, I mean, transitioning, I would say the biggest thing for me, I have it written down, is readings, readings, readings. It was something that my friend told me in college. He actually did the opposite as I, so he did university first and then went to college afterward. And when he knew I was going to Carleton, that was what he told me and what he stressed to me was readings above all else. And something I did not start with great in my first semester, and I learned from my mistakes going into the second semester and started keeping up with it every week because, yeah, it's manageable when you do it according to the plan. So that's huge. And yeah.
So one of your big surprises then was that you couldn't just go into a lecture cold. You had to do some prep work ahead of time to understand what you're going to be talking about.
That's exactly it. Yeah, I felt as if I didn't do the readings beforehand, I was missing out, and I just wasn't getting the full picture. So with the readings prior to the lecture, everything went smoothly. I knew exactly what the professor was talking about. That was huge.
Awesome. Okay, well, thank you so much, Tyler. Again, we'll be coming back to you in a bit. We're going to move on to meet Nick. Nick, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself, your program, and anything else you feel our audience should know.
I am a fifth-year student. In my third year at Carleton, I also transferred, but from a different university, in a completely different program. I'm in Bachelor of Art Honors in History, and yeah.
Awesome. And so, Nick.
Oh, right. Also, if it's relevant, I have a concussion.
You have a concussion. Okay. So thank you for sharing that with us. So that would be what you registered with the PMC as having, correct?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And so because of your concussion symptoms, what accommodations and supports were important to addressing your disability-related needs?
Mm-hmm. I have a few, and they've all been super helpful. The less relevant now, I had an accommodation to write my exams in a little room with non-fluorescent lights, like just a nice little desk lamp, 2 other people, so there's no distractions. I had extra time because the concussion makes my brain work more slowly than I'm used to, and all of that for exams, and it was super, super helpful. I definitely overpassed the normal time limit pretty much every exam, but having all of the quiet and darkness was really helpful. I also have a note taker accommodation where if someone volunteers to do so, I can get access to their notes that they take, which I never actually used, but it's really good psychologically to know that I have a fallback in case, I need to step out of class, because focusing for so long really is hurting my head. And the most practically relevant, like non-academic accommodation is that I am considered full-time as of 2 classes. And that is for bus passes, that is for applying for jobs, that's applying for scholarships, like the automatic scholarships that say, oh, you're not full-time. Well, thankfully the PMC helps advocate for us and we count as full-time anyway, which means I get the scholarships that I worked for.
Amazing. So it sounds like you kind of need to understand first what you needed a little bit before you knew what to ask for, right?
Yeah, and my advisor coordinator was really helpful in that we were able to just have a chat, talk about where I think I'll be struggling and the ways in which the PMC can help with that, and having a back and forth. And I just spoke yesterday with her about what that looks like now, because we're all online and screens aren't good for concussion. So maybe that means a break allowance for proctoring software during exams. Maybe that means other things. And the steps that I can take to try to limit screen time, but also get in touch with professors in case I need extra time on assignments, because I'm slower than I would be. Screens hurt, so it means that online school it's an interesting process.
Well, thank you so much for sharing some of those with us. I know that you covered a large amount of things outside of just accommodations that I think a lot of students really didn't know that they might have access to.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks,
yeah,
Nick. So again, we're going to be coming back to you definitely. And if we can move on to Sarah. Sarah, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, your program, and anything else you feel our students should be knowing about you?
Yeah, sure. So hi, I'm Sarah. I'm going into my 5th year at Carleton with 3rd year standing. I transferred to Carleton after I did my first year at a different university in a different program. Now at Carleton, I'm majoring in linguistics and discourse studies with a minor in disability studies, and I have been registered with the PMC since my 2nd semester at Carleton. I have a rare connective tissue disorder that's progressive and very unpredictable, and I also have anxiety, depression, chronic fatigue, all sorts of fun things. So the PMC has been incredibly helpful with all of that.
Wow, you are a stellar student, as everyone else on the panel is. It sounds like you're really engaged in your program. You're really excited about that. And again, really aware of where you might need support, it sounds like. Yeah. And that kind of leads me into my question a little bit. So what student services on campus have you used or found helpful while you've been at Carleton?
I have used so many of the services and supports on Carleton. Every year I find out about a new support I didn't know existed the previous year, and they're all so amazing. I'm just going to talk about some of my favorites because I couldn't possibly go over all of them. First off has been touched already, is my PMC coordinator has been so helpful. Our PMC coordinators advocate for us so well, and they really want us to succeed, and they really go the extra step to make sure we do. When I was seeing my coordinator, when I was suggesting accommodations that I had no idea I had a right to ask for, they just knew what I needed and was like, you know, you can ask for this. And it was so helpful. And then I also found out that through the PMC, we also have access to disability counselors, and my disability counselors the last 2 years has been the best counseling I've ever gotten in my life. They were so helpful. They're so great. They can see you as frequently as you need. I was going every 2 weeks to see my counselor. So helpful. And then we have a clinic on campus, which is so convenient to be able to just go to see a doctor or go get a basic clinic health test done right on campus. And I'm actually able to use one of the campus doctors as a kind of family doctor, since my family doctor is back in my hometown and I'm not able to see her. So they have been so helpful to just have those medical services on campus. And then Carleton's Health and Counseling, they also have a great resource library on their website with all the online resources for mental health. And then the last one I want to talk about really quickly is Act to Employ. Act to Employ is a program for disabled students to get placed or the opportunity to get paid employment. So Act to Employ helps students with disabilities find jobs, get jobs, stay employed. They do networking events, they do resume workshops, and they help teach employers about accommodations. I've been employed for at least 4 semesters now through Act to Employ, and I'm going to be working through them again this fall.
Wow. Okay. So many services to digest, and I'm glad you touched on a bunch related to as well as employment support and academic support too, to health support, and so that was really great to touch on all those bases. We're gonna move on to the next question, which has to do with what do you think success looks like for you as a student, and what helped you get there? So Nick, you had mentioned that you found out a lot through your disability coordinator once things happened, but what do you think success looks like for you as a student, and what helped you get there?
For me personally, it's being able to put all of my energy into studying and things that interest me, but then also after that, I'm hoping to be I'm applying for a master's program next year. This whole summer, or the second half of the summer, I was working with a professor on developing one of his courses through a new program through the library, Students as Partners program. It's been brilliant. I can see real world effects of my work. And basically, success to me looks like taking the passion that I've developed for the topic of my studies and being able to work in that field in something that I find fun.
Awesome. So you're really kind of looking forward to figure out what you need to do now a little bit.
Yeah, I'm looking at I'm literally right before this started, I was in the midst of writing to potential supervisors for master's programs. I'm thinking about where I'm going to be living, what, you know. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that. And Tyler, did you have any other things to add about what you think success looks like for you as a student and what helped you get there?
Yeah, sure. So for myself, I was working in the field since I was at Algonquin College, and I wasn't willing to let that go away when I started at Carleton. So something big for me was being able to juggle school, work, and personal life and do all three. And I definitely felt as if it was a lot when I started and was feeling kind of burned out by the end of first semester. And then thankfully through my PMC coordinator and through all the resources there, I actually met Amanda, and she was my mess coordinator, and her and I were able to work out like really effective plans for me to be able to manage my time much more effectively. And I was able to do everything I was doing before with so much less of the headaches and lost sleep. And that was huge for me because I wasn't willing to accept a reduction in what I was doing. I knew that I could do it all if it was managed properly, and through PMC and everything that was possible. So that was huge for me. So success is doing all three at once.
And it's really important that you mentioned that through learning strategies, it was something that you had to reach out for and kind of engage in order to be able to have access to the LS, right? The Learning Strategies program.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So that was the program that we did together there, and that was huge for me. So just learning that was even an option, and speaking with my coordinator and finding out all the extra resources that I hadn't accessed the first semester.
And did you find that working kind of helped you stay on track with school too?
Working is actually, yeah, it sounds backwards, but it certainly does. And it kind of actually goes back to, sorry, let me just find, I don't want to get the name wrong, Professor Motz. And it goes back to what he was saying about scheduling things in. And when your boss schedules you for a shift, you show up and you go to work. So having something that was like an extra thing on top of classes that was scheduled and wasn't able to be altered was just really helpful at like keeping me in line and making sure, you know, like there are other things to do, so I need to not slow down on school and not procrastinate, and that's huge. And then as well, I'm blessed to have a very supportive supervisor at work, and my boss is really amazing. Like he's the one who says school comes first, so he's helpful as well.
That's pretty awesome. Thank you for that. Kayla, I think you had some more supports or accommodations that might have been a little bit different from what Nick had access. So Kayla, can you tell us a little bit about the supports and accommodations that you've accessed at Carleton?
For sure. With my dyslexia, I have trouble reading and writing like really fast, so it takes a lot of time for me to do these things. So there's this transcription program where you could ask your supervisor if you're able to have your textbooks like transferred into some sort of like audiobook type of thing, which really did help me. I was able to do a lot of readings faster than I would be able to do without the transcriptions. Also, like Nick said, the take notes person that you could ask in your class to take notes helped me a lot too, because sometimes I find like I write too much and I just need to like focus and just write the simple stuff. But having someone who has the notes for you and you could see the important stuff noted, if you have a good a good note taker, it really does help. Also, Nick also mentioned like the extra time for exams and all that stuff is really helpful because my brain does take longer to process things. And the exam rooms that they have are pretty good too. You know, they're sort of, you're in your little cubicle and you don't have to worry about people shuffling their papers, getting done before you. And you're like, oh my God, worrying. So it's great.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing all that as well. Sarah, you had talked a little bit about disability counseling, and there's a question coming in from a student about how do you get referred to a disability counselor at PMC, and what's the difference between disability counseling and regular counseling?
You have to get your PMC coordinator to refer you to one of the disability counselors. The disability counselors, one of the big things is they're a little more familiar with the particular ways that having a disability can affect your university experience, which can affect your mental health. For me, like, I was struggling with the idea of asking for help and having to need certain accommodations because I was getting progressively sicker throughout my university experience. So they were helping me overcome that kind of almost shame of having to ask for help that I was struggling with. Whereas a normal counselor might not always be quite as aware of certain struggles that disabled students go through. And then on top of that, they were able to see me more frequently. The counselors elsewhere have more wait times, and sometimes you can only have like a monthly meeting or something. So they were able to help me a lot more with being able to meet with me more frequently, and just kind of know what I was going through. And also, what I really like about the disability counselors, they're students that are doing their masters. So it's helping them, but they've also very frequently learned. So they kind of have the newest strategies of working with students. The counselors everywhere are wonderful. I've just had a really amazing experience with them in particular. And I think they know what you're going through as a student because they're also still in school at just a different level, if that helps.
Yeah, that's great. That was a great answer. I'm going to open this up to the floor, and if you want to answer the question, just comment in our meeting chat that you want to go, and then that way we know which camera to show. But someone was asking about what your experience has been like talking to your professors. So whether or not you've disclosed that you have a disability to a professor, or in general, I guess, what has that communication with your professors looked like?
Hi. Well, even in high school, I would always tell my teachers that I have my disability just so they're aware of it. So something like, so they don't call upon me to read a whole text part of the textbook in front of everyone. And I'm like, oh God, okay. Stuttering the whole time. But in university, I feel comfortable like telling my teachers about it so they are aware of it. So at the beginning, I'll either email them about it with a nice, hello, my name is Kayla. Just to let you know, I do have a disability, and my disability is like dyslexia, and then a brief explanation of what it is so they're aware. Or just go up to your teachers and just tell them, like face to face, just tell them straight out. And a lot of them were just so kind. They were like, I completely understand, like, good for you, like coming up to me and talking to me about this, and whatever you need, I just ask and I can help you with that.
And so, when did you find was a good time for you to go talk to your profs?
I would always do it the first day.
Okay.
I would just want to get it over with. So I would wait till everyone left the classroom because I felt more comfortable waiting. And then I would get up and then I would go to my teacher and very politely I would shake their hand and say hello and explain the whole thing. And that's it.
And how do you think you're going to, I mean, it hasn't happened yet. So how do you think you're going to introduce yourself to your professors this coming term with the online switch?
I was thinking about that recently, and I think I'm going to do it through email, or some teachers, I think I know them, so I may just give them a call or like a little text or something, which is just great because they're so respectful. It's just always nice to like like let them know, because if they don't know, it's going to be harder for both of you to communicate, I find.
Awesome. So it sounds like you've had some generally good experiences reaching out to profs.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, Nick, you also had wanted to share your experiences interacting with a couple professors as well.
Yeah, I wrote a partial answer to this in the chat or in the Q&A section, but I almost every time, except for one professor, had perfect. I'll introduce myself sometimes, often I don't need to, because they get an email with your accommodations, and often they'll reply. They'll hit a reply all and say, great, I've acknowledged this, I'll do my best. And the one time where that wasn't the case, my coordinator was able to help me make sure that I got the accommodations that I needed, especially with regard to the exam center, because the professor just wasn't booking the exam. And so I needed to write to them, but it was fine.
Mm-hmm.
And what helped me get there, like, I only really got my concussion right before school started. And so my biggest challenge was getting used to the fact that I have it and acknowledging my limitations. And having the PMC to help me do that helped me get in touch with the professors to, you know, come to an agreement and figure out what I needed and what I can actually get. I didn't know that I could get these things, and I only signed up with the PMC partway through the year.
Okay. Thank you for that input as well. Now, Sarah, you had mentioned a little bit that when you went to disability counseling, it was because you felt a little bit embarrassed at times in terms of like how to broach this subject outside of the PMC environment. And someone's actually asking, you know, they feel a little bit embarrassed about their disability in the classroom environment. So what is something that you have initially struggled with that you learned to like help cope with those feelings?
Things is that every single person in university is struggling with something. Everyone's going through something, and everyone is so busy with their own lives that they're not really going to notice, pay attention to, or care. If you're getting accommodations, nobody's going to judge you for it. Everyone needs to succeed, needs certain things to succeed. They have their own strategies, and this is just kind of a new strategy that we need. And pretty much everyone I've met in university, teachers and students and service providers, have been super understanding, super nice, and super willing to accommodate anything we need. They're all very friendly and welcoming. I've never had a problem with a prof. Some profs are more familiar with certain accommodations than others, but all of them are willing to have a dialogue with you about it and about what you're going through and about what you need. And they also, like, there's no pressure to disclose. You don't have to tell them why you need your accommodation. If you don't want to, you don't have to go have a face-to-face conversation with your prof. You can have your coordinator set things up for you, or you can do it yourself if you prefer to do it that way. If it's going to help you do it, all of my accommodations have revolutionized my experience in university, honestly. And I didn't have people noticing as much as I thought I would. And the people who did, it wasn't judgmental. It wasn't negative. It was just, oh, that person has a scooter. That was the thing I had the hardest time asking for. I got a scooter for mobility. And even though people saw me standing up out of the scooter and walking into class by myself, that was what I was worried about. But there was no negativity towards it. It was just me doing worst case scenario.
Dare I say, and this is actually something that we see a lot. So a lot of our students who either didn't have a disability in their first year or had one and then didn't really want to ask for accommodations, they get referred a lot by their peers or by a professor. And we see sometimes, especially from peers, is that like once you kind of demonstrate like your understanding of your own learning needs and like what you need, a lot of other people kind of feel empowered to seek support. Does that sound about right?
For sure. I have talked to so many of my classmates or friends that are in different programs, and some of them hadn't heard of the PMC. Some of them didn't think that they needed it enough, that only students that, like, they didn't think they deserved to get the accommodations, which was very similar to where I started out. And I tell them right away, go get registered with the PMC. If it will help you, do it. It doesn't matter if you're doing okay. If you can do better or do the same, but your health is better, do it. Absolutely. I've had a lot of people who, when they've asked me about my accommodations or why I use something, I start talking about the services and they'll say, wow, I had no idea that was an option. And then they tell me what they're going through and they're like, well, maybe I will check it out. So for sure, it definitely only has positive outcomes. And I have definitely talked some people into registering with the PMC and getting the help that they needed. And it helped them so much. It made just as much of a difference for them as it did for me.
Awesome. Thank you so much. This one's actually for Tyler. Tyler, you were answering one of the questions that had to do with time management. And I know it was one of the big pillars that Professor Motz talked about as well. The question had to do with what strategies were given to you to help with your time management, especially, you know, you've got work going on as Sarah does, and I believe as Nick and Kayla do sometimes too. So what are some time management strategies that you would pass on?
So the first thing I would say right out of the bat is you need more than one. Every single strategy that you can have will be helpful, sort of like what Sarah was saying, where, like, you know, anything that helps, use it. So personally, I have a paper calendar that I do at the beginning of each month, and it sits right on top of, or right above my desk on my wall. I was using the Passion planners as well. I will drop the link to those in the Q&A. If that's helpful, I can add that. So it's this like free PDF, and it helps you specifically manage what your week looks like. You break it down by day, you break it down by top priorities, and that was actually something that I replied to as well with that message, was the ability to prioritize. And that was something that was huge for me in the learning strategies meetings, was learning that not everything is a top priority, because that was my personal flaw when it came to time management, was just treating everything like it was a top priority. And well, not everything can be done in one day. So what has to be done today? What has to be done tomorrow, this week, this month? And that's why the calendar is huge. Little reminders on your phone. I also sort of like break down the day on my phone. It sounds like a lot, but doing this extra work actually like lowered my stress significantly. So yeah, like having a daily planner, a weekly planner during school, and then also my monthly calendar is just huge for me to keep all the scheduling in place, all the time management, and then as well, afford yourself days where you're like just relaxing, right? Like afford yourself some days where you don't have 3 things to do. Color coding is helpful as well. And I would also suggest always have a fallback day. Never plan to do it personally. This was for me. Never plan to do like a new thing the day before something's due. So if you have a paper due or an exam, whatever the case may be, don't shovel a bunch of work for the day before. Have that day free, and just figure out when you need some free days, because sometimes we wake up and we're just not able to do everything that we plan to. So it's nice to have those fallback days that you can push stuff to. Yeah.
And Tyler already mentioned too, again, if you're having a hard time figuring out how to do all those things, you could definitely meet with a learning strategist. Just talk to your PMC coordinator about it. If you're not ready for that step yet, we also have some online modules that you can access through the PMC More modules. Again, talk to your PMC coordinator for a link on how to access those modules. And CSAS also has a lot of online modules as well that you can go through. So again, there's no shortage of supports and services when it comes to doing the stuff that you need to do as a student.
Yeah, and try everything, right? Not everything's going to work for you. So try everything, and whatever you find works best.
Awesome. Kayla, can you potentially answer this question for us, which is, how do you relieve your stress and or anxiety when it comes to due dates and tests? Tyler gave us some insights there in terms of prioritizing. Do you do anything differently than what Tyler has mentioned?
No, Tyler pretty much hit like the head on the nail kind of thing. Yeah, like I have an agenda and I make sure to write everything in it, like point form. I also like write down like what's most important, what needs to be done first. I color coordinate with different pens. Like you could be all like artsy fartsy about it if you want. It doesn't have to be a boring thing, you know. Get some stickers, slap it in there, like good job. And then when you flip to the page, you could be like, oh, look at me, good job, kind of like all happy dappy kind of thing. That's pretty much all you could do. But just don't think of it as a chore, because then it starts getting a little bit like tedious and boring. But just think of it as like a little calendar of fun homework.
Awesome.
But like try.
And actually, someone directed a question at you that has to do with academically, because you answered the question that had to do with the difference between university and high school. So
Yeah.
academically, what did you find was the biggest difference between high school and university? Did you find that you were studying more or less, or like kind of what did that look like?
I feel like you just it's a mixture. Like I feel like you're studying just as hard, but there might be just a little bit more that you need to get done. I just like the reading was a little bit more than I was used to, because in high school there wasn't that much of the reading, and if you did have any books that you had to read, you usually like read them in class with everyone. But now you have to do this on your own and start doing some readings and all. But it's like as long as you keep organized, it should be fine.
Awesome. Okay, so before we wrap up with our last question, I'm going to turn it over to Sarah to ask. Somebody was asking Sarah, how do you make friends when you have a disability? And again, I know this year is going to be a little bit different because we're not going to physically be seeing our peers in class. But Sarah, do you have any words of wisdom, especially for somebody who might have a mobility impairment, in terms of like how do you navigate the environment and find people who, you know, you can hang out with?
Yeah, for sure. Honestly, going into university, this was one of my biggest fears as well. This was something I thought a lot about and was really worried about. I had read this question as well and was already thinking about it. Yeah, some people will look at you sometimes for using a mobility device, but like I said earlier, it's never really negative. A lot of the times it's just kind of curious. And I always make sure to make eye contact and smile at them. It just reminds them that you're a student just like them, and also you see them looking. So if they're staring at you, sometimes they'll look away or they'll strike up a conversation with you. So it's kind of a win-win. Honestly, when I'm getting on my mobility device outside of class, because like I mentioned, I use a scooter that I park outside class and then walk in, either when I'm going into class or when I'm coming out of class and other people are around, sometimes they'll strike up a conversation with me, or I'll look over at someone and be like, hey, what did you think about this reading? Or did you have a hard time with this? Or how did you think the quiz went? And honestly, every time I strike up a conversation, it ends up going well. Sometimes when we go into class, I'll end up just sitting next to that person because we are still talking. And then during lulls in class, we'll just turn and talk to each other. Especially if you talk about like one of the readings or one of the assignments or something, you could be like, hey, do you want to send me the notes, or do you want to talk about this after class? And then you end up studying together. And then when you're studying together, you get to know them better. One of the things I'm planning on doing now that everything's virtual is a lot of the on CU Learn on our classes, most classes have like a student chat area or a forum or something. And I'm planning on pretty early on going, hey, does anyone want to start a virtual study session or a little mini study group? And when you're studying together, you all also get to know each other, you talk, and you end up making friends. My very best friend in the whole world, I met her my first semester at Carleton, and I met her because we ended up in a group project together, and we got to know each other while we were studying, and now she's my best friend and my roommate. So it turned out really well. So yeah, I'm planning on doing that virtually now. I'm just gonna say, hey, does anyone want to study together, and see if I get to know some cool people.
Awesome. Love the answers, you guys. And again, this is why I really love the student success panel. To all of you out there, we're going to be wrapping up with our final statements from each of our students. And I did want to let you know that all of them have graciously offered to be available to you should you have any direct questions for them. So if you do have any more direct questions for them, let our production team know your name, your email address, and who you want to talk to in the question and answer portion so that we can connect you with each of our panelists if you'd like to do that. And they'll be getting back to you if we email them probably within the next week because they're super busy students and have stuff coming up too. So that's just something I wanted to let you know about. So if you've got more questions, keep them coming and make sure that you say who you want to speak with or connect with, what your name is and what your email address is. So to end off with each of our panelists, and I'm going to start with Nick, I'm going to ask the age-old question that never gets old, which is, if you knew now, or so if you knew then when you first started university, what you know now, what is the most important advice you would pass on to a new student at Carleton?
At Carleton,
or a new student in general?
Yeah, I frankly don't quite remember because it was like 5 or 6 years ago. In my first year, I didn't do any of the readings and I barely went to lectures and I only scraped by barely. So don't do that. For Carleton, also, the most important thing that I can recommend is reach out to your profs and your TAs. Over the summer, I had to do bi-weekly assignments and I would catch things that the TA thought was wrong, but I don't think so. So I would reach out, and if I hadn't done that, I would be maybe a third of a letter grade lower in my final mark. And reaching out to your profs makes your class more fun. They know you by name, and you can ask for references later if you're trying to look for jobs, placements, co-op, or even further education. So talk to your profs and TAs.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Nick.
No worries.
And you also did mention with regards to Sarah's question as well, that clubs and societies on campus were another really good way to make friends, right?
Oh, yeah.
And I do know we heard from someone at the Student Experience office yesterday that they do have a lot of events available for students virtually this coming fall too. So check out both the Student Experience office website as well as CUSA. So we're going to move on to Kayla to hear what Kayla's response to, if you knew then what you know now, what is the most important advice you would pass on?
The most important advice that I would pass on is don't give up, even though it seems like really hard. And sometimes you're like, oh, this homework's so hard, I'm just going to do it later. And you push it to the last minute. I wouldn't do that. That is not smart. I've done it, and you will stay up the whole night trying to finish it for the next day. Also, take things one step at a time. Don't look at the peak of the mountain, look at the first ledge and take that first step, get there slowly and just have fun doing it.
Words of wisdom in your second year. Good job, Kayla. Thanks so much. Tyler, I'm going to put you up next. So Tyler, can you answer the question of if you knew then what you know now, what's the most important advice you could pass on? I know you also did touch a bit on the placement, co-op placement too. So please, Tyler, the floor is yours. And you might be muted again.
Yeah, for the placement part quickly, I did placement with Algonquin College, so that was a fully immersive placement where all I was doing during that was working in my field. That was really interesting. It was the first time being in my field, so for anybody who's looking to do co-op, I highly recommend it. If that fits into your plan for education, by all means do it, especially considering, yeah.
And I was going to interject there, at Carleton as well, if you've got any concerns about accessibility in co-op, we also work with the co-op advisors as well to make sure that you are accessible, your co-op placements are accessible. Go ahead, Tyler. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's huge. Also, to my understanding, if it's a co-op, you do get paid. So, already doing better than I was in placement. It's huge because you're getting the in-person experience, the field experience, which university is really huge on the analytic skills, right? The researching and everything, but we don't go in the field while you're learning in university. That's just not what it's geared for. So being able to do co-op while you're here would be huge. Getting an idea of what both sides look like is fantastic. As far as the biggest advice to give myself coming in is access resources. I was not at all, I was pretty much just too confident. I was overconfident that I could do it all on my own and without accessing resources, and that just wasn't the way to go. Speak to your coordinators, do everything possible. Learning strategies, I highly recommend. Do everything possible that you think can be helpful. And if you're struggling to think of something, ask your coordinator. Say, like, have a meeting with them. They have your file, so they get a sense of what you're after, and they can help point you in the right direction for some resources that look like they would be helpful. And something in the same vein of what Nick was saying is you are your biggest advocate. PMC is here for you, and they have your back, and they're incredibly supportive. But in the end of the day, it's your education on the line, and you are your biggest advocate. So don't be afraid to speak up for yourself. And assuming that you've done the research, also like Nick was saying, if you do the research and you know that your grade is solid, or something doesn't make sense and you've done all the reading possible to back that up, then go for it. And yeah, just be confident in yourself.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tyler. And Sarah, last but absolutely not least, can you please answer the question about if you knew then what you know now, what is the most important advice you would pass on to a student?
First of all, I want to say all three answers so far have been so true. Everything they said is definitely something I would say. Building off one thing that was said, definitely talk to your prof or your TA, especially if you think there's something wrong with your grade. Twice now, once at Carleton and once at my previous university. After the final exam, my final grade came in and it was a lot lower than I was expecting. And they'd put in my final exam mark wrong. They put in someone else's, and my grade ended up being a difference of 2-letter grades. I went from a C to an A just because of one little error. So like, make sure if you think there's something wrong, you're probably right. Just reach out to your professor and say, hey, I'm not sure this was wrong. If I did get this grade, can you explain where? And if not, can you please just double check it? And they're happy to either tell you where you went wrong or say, oh my gosh, I made a mistake, here's the right thing. So I just wanted to put that out there. Like, don't be afraid to kind of like second guess something if you feel like it's not right. All of the professors are also human. We all make mistakes, especially when it comes to technology. So I just wanted to say that first. But other than that, don't stress. There's a lot of services that have your back. People have your back. You're not alone. Even if like I moved hours away from home, I didn't know anyone in the new city where I was or anything, you're still not alone. There are people there that will have your back if you ask for help. Or you don't even have to say like necessarily ask for help. A lot of people, if you just mention that you're struggling, they'll be like, hey, did you hear about this service? Hey, I can help you out with that. People are very welcoming and want to help because they've been in the same boat or they are in the same boat, and they want you to have an easier time than they had. Like, I always want people to have an easier time than I had, and I'll be like, hey, try doing this. It really helped me. And another thing that was pointed out, don't just try one strategy. Every person has different things that work for them. I've had a lot of very popular strategies suggested to me that just didn't fit. And I thought at first that like I was a failure because I was still struggling with these strategies, but my brain just worked a little differently and something else worked better. A big thing that Kayla mentioned that has been my saving grace, break things down. Little steps, little tasks. That has been a huge difference between me getting things done on time or leaving it all to the last minute and having mental breakdown. So just figure out what works for you and communicate both with other people, with service providers, and professors.
Awesome.
Sorry, that was
Thank you so much, Sarah. We just need to move on to the mini fair. So again, all our panelists, I want to say a great, big, huge thank you from all of us at PMC and from all the attendees watching you online. You guys are truly words of wisdom and full of knowledge, and we know you're going to be going great places. We're going to be going on to new places in just a minute. We're going to go over to the mini fair. Please join us in the mini fair so you can hear from some other student services on campus. Thanks again to all the panelists and everyone. Welcome to Carleton, and I hope you have a great first term. Even though we won't be seeing you in person, we'll definitely be looking forward to seeing you virtually. Bye now.